Welcome to the Worldwide End Time Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Brian DeLore, and I thank you all for tuning into the program this evening. And on tonight's program, I'm going to be explaining the beast that was and is not of Revelation chapter 17. I believe that this is one of the most difficult portions of Scripture to try to interpret. And if you ever look this up, if you ever do a Google search on the internet, you will find a myriad of interpretations and teachings concerning this entity described in Revelation 17. I have studied Bible prophecy ever since I've been a Christian. I've been studying the Bible, and I've read many Bible commentaries on this subject, and they all have differing opinions. And the problem of it is none of the opinions that I read by very able Bible scholars, they just didn't seem to be right to me. It just didn't seem to fit. And in the past week, I've been doing a lot of research on this subject. And I believe that through the inspiration of the Spirit of God, I have been given the interpretation on the meaning of these verses of Scripture, primarily located in Revelation chapter 17. And John is describing a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And when you come down to verse 8, he's being given this vision by Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ has sent an angel to give him the interpretation of what he's seeing. So the angel gives John the interpretation, and he says to him, "The beast you saw was and is not." And then I believe it's in verse 12, it talks about the people on the earth whose names are not written in the book of life, wondering after the beast that was and is not and yet is. Now, this is obviously very confusing language, but of course the Bible tells us, Jesus tells us, that the Spirit of God will lead us and guide us into all truth. Now, I have been praying for the interpretation of this particular portion of Scripture for years. I thought I had received it. The mistake most people make in trying to interpret this passage of Scripture is that they tend to focus on one entity, when what is being described here is 3 entities in one, basically speaking. The beast is comprised of the Antichrist, Satan, and the religious political system of Rome. And so these are 3 separate entities, but they're all inextricably linked together. And so they're so intertwined that oftentimes when John is talking about the beast, you can get the impression he's talking about one entity when he's really speaking of another, or he might be speaking of the whole system. It's just very confusing. And so, of course, I'm attempting in this broadcast to end the confusion and provide a correct interpretation of the verse of Scripture. And here is the interpretation I believe that God has given me. It's the only thing that makes sense. When the angel tells John that the beast you saw he's referring to Satan. If you remember, when Jesus came and died on the cross, he rendered a death blow to Satan's kingdom. So, in effect, Satan, he lost all of his authority over the human race. So, in effect, he's no longer relevant spiritually speaking. Now, let me explain that. Let me qualify what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, Satan still exists. Obviously, he still possesses supernatural powers. And obviously he is able to cause all kinds of problems in the earth. But at the same time, spiritually speaking, in terms of his spiritual authority over the human race, he no longer has any. It was broken when Jesus came to the cross. And this is what was prophesied in the book of Genesis chapter 2, I believe, when it says that when God tells the serpent, the seed of the woman shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. He's speaking of the day that Jesus comes to the cross and the damage Jesus' death is going to do to Satan's kingdom. And so when John says the beast you saw was, that's speaking of Satan. Then the next part is the beast you saw was and is not. Well, the is not is part of the beast, is the Antichrist. Remember, I just told you, all of these entities are three entities in one. So the beast that you saw was, that's Satan. And is not, this is the Antichrist himself. The Antichrist has never operated at any time on planet Earth. He is not here. His kingdom is yet future. He hasn't been here yet. So his kingdom will be during the 7-year tribulation period. That's when he comes to power. And then midway through the 7-year tribulation period, he declares himself to be God. And that's when he really, things really get bad on the earth. I mean, this is going to be a horrible time, a time that's unparalleled in history, in human history. But be that as it may, it has not happened yet, and so the Antichrist is not here. And then when it says yet is, this portion is speaking about the Antichrist spirit. You see, the Antichrist spirit, Antichrist means opposed to Christ. And that spirit has been on the earth really throughout the entire time, but it really began to manifest itself during the time when the church was established in the earth. So that is when the Antichrist spirit began to be manifested towards the Christians. And so during that time, since that time, that spirit has been on the earth, and it will continue until Jesus comes and destroys the kingdom of the Antichrist at the end of the tribulation period. So that's what that means. So allow me to summarize. The beast you saw is Satan. The beast that is not is referring to the Antichrist who's yet to come, and the yet is portion is speaking of the Antichrist spirit that is alive and well in this earth even today. So that's what that's talking about. And I wanted to share this with you all because, when I'm doing my research for these programs, I have to really spend a lot of time searching the internet. Ignore that. That's someone who's trying to reach me that shouldn't be. I have to really research because most of the information I come across is very inaccurate, very erroneous. And, it takes me a long time you have people who believe the Antichrist, these are preterists. They believe the Antichrist came to power back in AD 70, things like this. And so for the layman, someone who has no knowledge of the Bible whatsoever, or Bible prophecy, it's very confusing. And so that's the purpose for which I do these programs, in hopes that I can shed light on the scriptures and give people some type of guidance to help them in their Bible study. That's one of the main reasons I do this program. And so that's what I wanted to share with you all tonight. I hope it's helped you. I know it certainly helped me, and I feel like, 35 years of seeking has finally paid off. And so that's really very helpful to me, very encouraging. Okay, with that, I'm going to close out the program, but I have a couple of announcements to make. I'm sure you all have noticed that the name of the program has been changed to Worldwide End Time Radio, and I think that better describes the ministry I have through this podcast, because the podcast is worldwide in scope, potentially. I mean, we have whenever you're broadcasting on the internet, you're reaching all the ends of the world, except in the countries where these Christian broadcasts are not allowed. But basically speaking, I have a potential to reach millions upon millions of people. And of course, it is the end times. And the focus now of this ministry is on end time events. And so, of course, it is considered radio in a way, internet radio, not terrestrial radio. But that's what the name really means. And I think it's a better description of this ministry. Okay, I'm going to have to go for now. And, of course, you all know about my website, American Christian Radio, and my new app, downloadable from Google Play, free of charge, Truth Central Christian Radio. And as always, till we meet again, I leave you with this reminder: keep the faith and defend the truth. Have a good night, everybody.